Welcome back, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are here with Andy Shectman for another episode. Hopefully, we're going to dive into some stuff that you guys have been asking about. I've been talking to a lot of you on the phone. There's been a reoccurring theme that I've been having with people. It's about what's currently happening and how something just doesn't feel right. Every single person I've talked to on the phone has mentioned this. So I wanted to bring this up with Andy, pick his brain on this and just throw some ideas out there because I know all of you have been feeling this, including myself. So Andy, what's up? What do you think this thing is?
I think it has to do with what's happening in this country, the divisiveness. Red and blue can't even speak anymore. Lawlessness, open borders, FBI saying, be careful for homegrown terror. We're very, very concerned about that. People being stopped at the border that are on the FBI's most wanted list, or what's happening in terms of I guess I'd say it's a culture war that we're facing, and in market turndowns or in market collapses, cultural wars become especially dangerous in financial and economic collapses. But I think the country's been kind of demoralized by, at least some people have, by the washing away of traditional values, and I think that's kind of it. People can't even talk to each other anymore. I think, traditional Americans in the red states think that Trump is being railroaded with lawfare to derail his campaign. And, there was a report by a small college in Virginia that said like 53% of Democrats feel that violence is acceptable in achieving their goals, and 47% of Republicans say the same thing. We are a country that is not united anymore, and the values that once were so prevalent and important in this country are being washed away. And it's just a situation where I think it's really concerning a lot of people, where the rise in violent crime in the big cities, and just the general sense of disconnection, of division, the lack of unity. Those things to me are really permeating. And then the cost of living being so expensive. I don't care what the inflation numbers say. The inflation numbers lie. The costs of things are ridiculous. Go buy a large sub at Subway and you pay 15, 16 bucks. I mean, is that really what fast food is? Everything that people are struggling, the evisceration of the middle class, struggling to put food on the table and pay their bills. You had the resumption of student debt payments in October. 40% of those who were supposed to pay didn't. So you have people that are just not paying because either they're protesting or waiting for the White House to try and forgive some of it, which is a joke. It's the largest asset of this country,
Yeah,
student debt, believe it or not.
I remember when you mentioned that one of the
But
episodes.
I think what it is more than anything, man, is that people are just freaked out by what they see around them. And I was on a podcast this morning with Kai Hoffman, and I said, Kai, I think there are a lot of people that can't articulate what it is that's bothering them. But like, for all you Star Wars, geeks out there, I remember I was 7 years old when Star Wars, the original one, came out, and I lived 3 blocks from a movie theater. I must have saw it 100 times back then. But there's a disturbance in the force. People feel it, and even if they can't quite articulate it, I think it has to do with the cost of living. It has to do with the divisiveness and the lawlessness and the lack of our culture being torn apart and divided. And I think that's really more than anything, more than it is financially, other than the cost of living, gasoline and food and whatnot, is more along the lines of just the traditional values of this country are being washed away. And I think that's what's upsetting people more than anything, myself included.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Usually our affairs are overseas, but it seems like it's home territory. And I think the scary part right
Well, you
now.
look at the
Civil, you
Communist
know.
Manifesto and it, chapter one, divide and conquer. Well, we are a divided country. We are not a unified, united country anymore. And that's the scariest part of all
Yeah.
is that, if your back is to the wall, as the Americans have been for many times in the past, it was, I believe, everyone pulling together at the same time for a common goal, and that's the thing. We're not white or black or red or blue, or we're Americans. And part of the problem is that we are now letting in literally 10 million people into this country illegally. Now, California just passed a law that all of these people who have entered the country illegally will be given medical
Housing,
care
cell phones. Yeah.
and medical care. And
Yeah.
how do you pay for that? California doesn't have the money to pay for its current programs, let alone the 700,000
Right.
illegal immigrants that have entered the country. They already face a $68 billion deficit. Who's going to pay for this?
Yeah.
And I think it's one of these deals where this country is going through a metamorphosis, and there are a lot of people who I think are struggling to deal with that reality. That's to me part of the bigger deal.
That I think that is you hit the nail on the head, I think, because I mean, man, and it's like then not even going into like, the bricks and all that other stuff that's formulating. It's like the stars are aligning in a very scary way.
It
Like
is.
everything is and I've said that about silver as well, like the stars are like the perfect storm is here for silver, but also in a very negative manner, which is kind of weird for stackers. And I said this, I came up with this quote yesterday in one of my videos. It's actually pretty cool. It's like, we can't predict the future, but we can prepare for the future. We can prepare for it. And I feel like that's what people are lacking. They're not preparing.
Well, I
It's
mean,
kind
think
of
of it
just
this way, man.
out of sight, out of
When
mind.
was the last time we had states that removed presidential candidates from the ballot? It was
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln. And what was the result? Well, we had a civil war. Now, I'm not saying that's where we are right now, but I mean,
Close.
where four judges or one politician from Maine, I think it was, feel that they can make these unilateral decisions that affect, in essence, half the country.
Yeah.
And this is a very bad thing. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you fall upon.
Yeah.
It's more along the lines of what's being done to our Constitution and to our democratic rule of law and to what this country stands for. And that's just the biggest thing. I think people feel this. And the difference also is we're being bombarded by these things in every different direction. And it used to be you didn't think about all of these things. It would be one or two newsworthy items per year, not per day. And I think
Yeah.
that's people are just information fatigue. And I think that's, part of the deal is that people are just being bombarded with all of this bad news and these realizations that this stuff is happening. This is a big deal. I think it's not just the mismanagement of the dollar and the formation of the BRICS and the loss of the petro status. It's also, I think, part and parcel with what's going on here. Then you add to it 65% of the country's paycheck to paycheck, 45% earning over six figures, paycheck to paycheck. And, we're not in a good place. We're indebted. The country is 130% debt to GDP. There's never been a country to come back from that without defaulting, either outright or by hyperinflation. We are not in a good place. And I think the reverberations of all of these things are starting to catch people. They feel these vibrations that aren't really good vibrations. And I think you're sleeping if you don't feel them.
Yeah, I feel like the 2024 election couldn't be at a more perfect time, but also at a scarier time.
Yeah. Well,
Like
let's
there's,
hope we have an election. I was
yeah,
listening to someone the other night, a real smart guy, and he's saying, look, last time the World Economic Forum had a summit or talked about something, it happened, and that was of a pandemic. Well, now they're talking about a cyber attack. You want to shut down the elections, maybe have a really big cyber attack leading up to the election. I don't know what it is, but I mean, let's hope we have an election.
Yeah.
And, who knows, maybe we'll be in World War III, God forbid. You got Xi Jinping saying there is nothing he will do to not stop at uniting Taiwan and China. And, what are we going to do if that happens? We're already embroiled all around the world in wars that we
We're
can't
in
afford.
seven. I made a video the other day. We're involved in 7 different wars right now.
Right.
Like
And we can't afford it. And so what's going to happen? And we're spending I don't know, a couple $1 million per Patriot missile or whatever to knock down drones that cost a few $1,000. Um, Chinese and Iranian made drones. I mean, that's not a good return on capital. We're depleting our munitions. We've given so much of it away to Ukraine and to Israel and the things that we're doing. We're depleting our military. Our military has become woke and watered down where they're having a hard time recruiting. I wonder why. And, this is a bad deal, man. It's a bad deal. We are so far deviated from the principles of this country where you can see statues being torn down at Arlington Cemetery. Like, I mean, get over it already. We're erasing and whitewashing the history and the culture of this country. That's a bad thing. And we're replacing it with new ideologies that will
yeah,
not lead to this country being the leader that it once was. But look at it this
yeah,
way. I mean, the Congressional Budget Office came out just a few weeks ago and said by 2031, in 7 years, 100% of all the income tax receipts will be used to pay the interest on the debt and the mandatory entitlement spending. That's it. That means in 7 years, the most powerful dominant country on the planet will have to borrow 100% of all their discretionary spending, like military. So how are we going to be the dominant military and economic superpower when we are 150 trillion in debt and borrowing money just to pay the interest on the debt, let alone to fund our ever expanding military? It's really a very bad place. And these things, even if they're not reported by the mainstream the right way, they have reverberations of energy that people pick up. That's why they can't articulate it, but they feel it. And, I think I'm not a very religious person. I'm very spiritual, but I do believe that, and this is going to sound weird because I've never said anything like this, but I do think the way that we've turned our back on God in this country has ramifications. And I'm not a religious guy, I mean, I'm not, but I'm very spiritual. And I think there are higher powers. And it just seems that everything that this country stood for, like, God and respecting authority and the nuclear family and all of the things that made this country very safe and stable and respected and created a culture of respect and hard work uh, is all being thrown by the wayside. And you look at the fact that 40% of the people who are supposed to pay their student debt back in October didn't. It's disrespectful, and they're just waiting to be given something for free. And you know that's not how this country pulled itself up from its bootstraps after all of the other um, difficult times that we've faced. And I don't think we are in position to deal with more difficult times the way that we should be. And maybe it's just that people are beginning to understand this, that is creating this unease.
wow, wow. You said a word. I think this word is very important. Respect. Nobody respects us anymore.
Well, that's it. How could they? How could they
Yeah,
respect us? Look at the buffoons running our White House, Biden and Harris. I mean, come on. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. And he's pretty much gone, and she's an idiot. Listen to her speak. It's just embarrassing. They're equally as embarrassing in the way they speak. And we go around the world and we coerce and we bully. We mismanage our spending. We have open borders. We have elections that people are looking at and like, come on, are those real? We have a judicial system that is being called into question if it's being applied equally. We have all of these things. We have, these woke agenda ideologies that are being shoved down our throats that the rest of the world must look at and laugh. And it doesn't inspire confidence. It doesn't make us look like leaders at all. It makes us look completely divided and lost. And then you throw into the mix that we are completely and totally broke. At the same
Yeah.
time, we spend money that we don't have. Um, it's crazy. Then you look at, for example, like the economy. 92.5% of all the equities are held by the top 10% wealthiest Americans. So the rich get richer and the rest get eviscerated. And I think that these are things that are breaking apart the fabric of the country. And then you look at what we're doing outside the country by mismanaging the world reserve status, by creating enemies, by weaponizing the dollar, by actually saying we're going to confiscate, not just sanction those assets, use them to rebuild the Ukraine, signing executive orders to go green, doing all of these things that are making the rest of the world rally against us. And that's why you have to ask yourself, is this shit intended? I mean, could it really be intended where we do everything we can to lose the world reserve status and then destabilize the country, indebt it and destabilize it so much, create such divisiveness that we are not unified in a manner to rally against any potential black swan? And then you put into the mix massive indebtedness and unpreparedness. I mean, it's a very scary thing. And
And
I don't want to be doom and gloom, but there's a fine line
yeah,
between pessimism and realism these days. It
yeah,
really is.
yeah. And and in my opinion, I feel like Trump is the only one that has the experience and the connections to maybe get that respect back. And the country's trying to make sure that does not happen. Didn't he just get banned from a state, or that state won't be allowed to vote for the election or
Yeah, that was
something?
Maine. It was a unilateral
Maine,
decision
yeah,
made by the Secretary of State, I believe. But whatever it was, I mean, this person does not have the ability to do this. Um, it's a joke. It's truly a joke. It's making a mockery of our democracy. And he wasn't even convicted on insurrection. And anyone who believes he was involved in insurrection, I mean, come on. It's crazy. And that just goes to show how gullible and naive this
yeah,
country truly is. And yet all of these things the Biden family has done, these horrible, horrible things, selling away state secrets, or getting paid from China and from Russia and all. I mean, it's just completely
there's
brushed
way
under the rug, and it's just crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy, and this is why you have what amounts to a civil war on your
yeah,
hands. You have half of the country hates each other, and the other half hates the other half. I mean,
yeah,
it's a situation that is very un-American, and that is why the Communist Manifesto would say divide and conquer. So it's done on two fronts. We've already destabilized and indebted this country so much that it would be easy to topple them over. Our military is spread thin all around the world. Our munitions are being depleted, and we've lost credibility and confidence with most of our um, foreign creditors
yeah,
who have allowed us to live well beyond our means. I mean, all of these things are converging at you, as you were saying, at once. And I think if you don't notice it, you're not paying attention. Now, what does it mean? How's it all going to play out? I have no idea. But I have a feeling it will come to the detriment of this country as being the dominant player in the world. And ultimately, I think that's what they're trying to do, because they realize, that there is no way out of this without some sort of a reset. And it's a lot easier to reset when you blame someone for creating
yeah,
the problem rather than falling on the sword for your own, you
yeah.
know, mismanagement.
Especially with an election coming as well.
You see what they're doing to keep Trump off the ballot. I mean, it's like they don't want an election, and they
Yeah,
don't want this. They want to maintain status quo, and that's why I think it's scary to think what would the probability be of some event that could actually delay
yeah.
or postpone or cancel an election. Now, that's never happened before, but it just
It
seems
wouldn't be.
everything that's happening
Yeah,
nowadays has never happened before.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk silver. I think it's sitting around $24. I haven't checked today, but I know it was 24 yesterday. What do you think silver is going to do over the next year? I know it's impossible, it's impossible to tell with so many things, but I've seen some predictions. I think it's Citibank or somewhere predicts $29 by the end of 2024. I think it's very, playing it very safe. But what do you think?
Well, look, I mean, gold hit, there's zero hype global, I mean, in this country about gold. And GLD hit its all-time highs last week. And on December 27th, the London benchmark for gold hit its all-time high. And there's virtually no hype about it, which is really weird to me. And I think there'll be an inflection point this year where gold and silver become mainstream. Maybe it has to do with the banks collapsing or bailed in or whatnot. And then they really start to make significant pronounced moves. I think it's important to realize that on December 27th, the closing price of silver on the Shanghai Gold Exchange was 26.50 an ounce. But on the CME, which is the COMEX, it was 24.31. So $2.19 higher, almost 10% higher on Shanghai than on the CME or on the LBMA. Now, that is a trend that you'll continue to see happen. I think they will slowly turn up the heat and arbitrage all the gold and silver away from the West. You look at what's happening on COMEX. The open interest on silver right now is 1,500% of the registered silver. In other words, there's 1,500% more paper than there are bars backing it. And so that's a situation that grows very dangerous by the day. That's what the Hunt brothers noticed in 1980.
Yep.
Way more contracts than bars. Yep. It's being suppressed. And you got a report that just came out that Mexico, who has been the #1 producer of silver on the planet, their silver production is down 25% over the last 2 years.
Made a video about that yesterday.
If you don't expect that they will do some sort of nationalizing of their mines before it all goes bye-bye, they're saying that by 2026, they could be out of silver. I mean, who knows? I don't know. I mean, I think, look, silver is the most undervalued commodity on the planet. And the central banks are buying it, not just gold. India bought 80 million ounces between October and November. They bought 304 million ounces in 2022. I think there are very few things on the planet that offer the upside potential that silver does. And it's so counterintuitive and has been not enjoyed the same rally that gold has, that it's being ignored by the mainstream. And that falls right into the hands of the countries that are using the suppression of the Western market against us and using the environment of really make-believe commodity prices, courtesy of the Western system, to accumulate as much as they can, slowly enough so not turn up the heat on the prices, but just enough so that they can pickpocket the world of all of their gold and silver to anyone who's foolish enough to let go of them at these prices. There are very few things that I've ever seen in 33, almost 34 years in finance that offer what silver does in terms of its fundamentals, both geologically and historically in price. Between supply and demand, a growing demand and decreasing supply, both above ground and in ground. I mean, you couldn't ask for better fundamentals. So, and there's the old saying that the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. The market is irrational. The price is irrational. The price is counterintuitive. But the big money draining it using the Western suppression should be key for you to see the truth. And that is that they're using it against us. And one day, and that's the little by little by little by little, bang, all at once, we'll wake up on a Monday morning and COMEX will be irrelevant. And Shanghai will say, COMEX and LBMA have silver at $29. We're putting it at 47. And watch how fast every drop of silver that hasn't yet been sold moves eastward. And the whole system in the West is then rendered for what it is. There'll be two prices, the West and the East. And I just think that there are very few things that you can buy that offer you safety, stability, privacy, exit from the matrix, and upside potential the way that silver does.
Yeah. I feel and the saddest part is when silver does skyrocket, that's when everyone's going to buy,
Yeah,
people,
of course.
It's so silly to see that, they wait till it already explodes instead of get in before the curve.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, man, we are planning on issuing $1 trillion of treasuries a quarter for the next year, $4 trillion worth of debt that we are issuing. And at some point, the world is just going to really give up, I think, on accepting our debt as an asset. And I
Yeah,
think that's really, really what it boils down to, that from a historical standpoint, accepting a country's debt as an asset, it has a very short historical precedent. And I think the rest of the world is beginning to understand that as they are shedding treasuries. They're choosing gold and silver and hard commodities instead. One of the pushbacks against a common settlement currency rather than a reserve currency. So I think the BRICS will issue a settlement currency, common. Maybe it's at the meeting in Russia this year, or maybe it's 2 years from now. Who knows? But the response is, what do you do with all of the excess reserves? What do you put them in to maintain, stability and then a return on it? Well, you know, for the first time in 45 years, the 10-year treasury is more volatile than gold and silver. And that's because all of these central banks are selling treasuries and buying commodities. Well, that's how you do it. I mean, I think that commodities will take a different gold and silver, and in particular, will take a different view, a different worldview in the coming years. Instead of government debt being used as a liquid asset, I think instead it will be something more along the lines of gold and silver, which will be viewed as real wealth, something that is
yeah,
finite and depleting. And there will become a rush. There will be a rush to get it. So we ain't seen nothing yet. That's all I can
yeah,
tell you. And that's why I use the logarithmic decay. The little by little by little, look at all the gold and silver that the world is accumulating, and look at the reasons behind it. The world other than the West is massively accumulating more gold
yeah,
accumulated than any time in
yeah.
history by the central
Yeah, I was gonna
banks.
say this was a record this year,
So
wasn't it?
that's
Yeah,
the little
record.
by little by little by little, then bang, all at once, when it just becomes a realization to the mainstream, and
Yeah,
and everyone runs to get it. It's too late. You're right. They'll run to get it after it is too late. But that's
yeah,
the way all markets work, and that's why so few people ever really succeed in investing, because they're moved by their emotions more than anything, and they don't spend the time to understand the fundamentals. And the most distressing thing about the way that we look at the world is that we've studied the fundamentals for so long. It makes so much sense to you and I and the people who followed you forever, and it doesn't play out yet. Well, that's the counterintuitive nature of it. This is a high stakes game, but the rest of the world is using that suppression against us, and they are stockpiling. They're stacking, they're stockpiling, they're
yeah,
de-dollarizing, and that's the little by little by little. If you look, you see it. There will come an all at once moment, whatever that
yeah,
is. I don't know, but I do believe in my heart we will see it. Will it be 2024? Maybe. Don't know, but I think we're getting to that point.
yeah, yeah. Record this year for gold. It's like, why would if gold and silver aren't worth anything, or especially silver, how they try to downplay it, then why are so many banks accumulating so much of it? So
Well, not only
yeah,
that, I mean, listen to a few of these comments. Let's see here. The German central bank, gold is the bedrock of stability for the international monetary system. This is all said in 2023. Italy says gold is an excellent hedge against adversity. These are the heads of the central banks. France says considered to be the ultimate store of value. Hungary says gold may play a stabilizing role in times of structural changes in the international financial system or deep geopolitical crisis. The Dutch National Bank says this has been a political decision. If there is a financial crisis, the gold price will skyrocket, and official gold reserves can be used to underpin a new gold standard, according to the Dutch National Bank. I mean, how many of these things do you need to hear? The head of the Polish National Bank said when someone shuts off the power to the financial system because everything is digital, gold will underpin legitimacy in a new system. All of these banks, the heads of the central banks, are saying it, but no one's listening. And that's the point. So yeah, I think that the big money understands what's coming, and you can't get out of the way of what you don't see coming. And that's the problem with the West. The West doesn't the West, the reason people have no idea what's coming is because the West doesn't give us a good picture of what's happening outside the border. And they
Yeah.
don't. And
Yeah.
they don't show us what's really happening. How many people know that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, along with Egypt and Iran and Ethiopia, just were formally admitted into the BRICS yesterday? How many people know that and understand the significance of it? And between the UAE, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, the majority of the world's oil supplies and the controlling of the Red Sea and the Straits of Hormuz. I mean, you got all of these things, whether it be geographic or commodity or based, natural resource based. These are the countries that are all joining together. It's being done strategically, little by little. And that's why we'll wake up one morning and find a switch flipped, but not until then. And I think that's the hard part for most people to grasp.
I was making a video the other day. I got into the topic of states bringing back the gold standard. I've talked about this before, like years ago, and I was like, I didn't think it would be possible. What do you think about this happening, and where do you think this could play out to?
I think that it could play out to a realization by the public that um, the dollar and the Federal Reserve and the banking system are filled with counterparty risk. I think it's pushback against the mismanagement of the reserve currency. I think it is an awakening by a small resistance of people to what gold and silver are. They are money. They are wealth. And the currency that we believe to be money is being destroyed. And I think that's the thing, is that so few people understand it. What this will do is broaden the awakening and the understanding of it. And that's the most important thing to me.
I talk to so many people and they get it, but I try to make videos to reach out to the person that's never invested a single penny in their life. And you're right. I didn't really think about this. We always hear about other countries' media being censored, against them. But our media is censored as well. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that. Like when I talk about this stuff and post videos, I'm exposing a lot of stuff that nobody knows unless they're subscribed to some other random. There's only so many channels that talk about this stuff as well. That's why I try to
Right.
say, subscribe. Don't subscribe for my sake. It's for your own. Because I'm telling
I
stuff
couldn't
that
agree more. And
yeah,
that's just it. That's why you are more of someone bringing real information and news to the system than the mainstream is. But you got guys like Al Gore saying that people like you are a threat to democracy because it's the alternative media that is not giving the same message to everyone that the mainstream. I mean, come on, really? It's that the mainstream is keeping people blind by the truth, to the truth, and the alternative media is exposing it. But the masses have yet to catch on, and that's what I think you could argue. Um, these states pushing back and going back to sound money um, will do for this industry. Will wake up a lot of people. I really do believe that.
yeah. Like as a father, like it's it's like sad. Like it's really sad.
I
I
couldn't
don't
agree
know.
more, to
Like
be
it
honest with
kind
you.
of killed my mood, but it needs to be said though, like it needs to be talked about. Truth hurts.
I
Man.
could not agree more. I could not agree more. And I think that when I look at a lot of the things I talk about, it's through the lens of being a father of three kids.
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing. This isn't about getting wealthy. This is about getting out of the way of something that's not going to be great. That's coming our
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
I hate being pessimistic, but there's a fine line between it and realism these days. And I'd rather be able to get out of the way of what's coming than to and even potentially thrive, not just survive, than be completely and totally blindsided by it.
Yeah. Yes, we're genuinely trying to help people protect themselves. Like I was talking to this guy on the phone yesterday. Great. Like I've met so many great people, man. And we're just talking. He's like, it's like I have so many wealthy friends, but he's like, they just don't get it. It's like, they don't get it. They won't listen to me. And it's just and he's like, I'm not, they think he's trying to like sell them something, or, and he's like, sometimes
That's
people
been
just
my
genuinely,
reality my
yeah,
whole life. And because when you are talking about these things, you are speaking to, unpleasant times rather than prosperity and good times. You're speaking about preparedness for something unpleasant. And that's why people don't want to hear it. I get
yeah,
that. It's a noble endeavor to want to help people, but they'll come calling, but not until it's far too late. And but that's just the way it goes. Everyone called Noah a fool, and then everything flooded, and he got away safely. Well, what's going to happen to the people who delegitimize all of this stuff is that they're going to be the ones that are hurt the most. And
yeah,
I again, and that's why I think when you talk about buying gold and silver, you make it known this is not about becoming wealthy. This is wealth that has outlived everything the world's ever thrown at it for 5,000 years and is being accumulated at levels by the most elite and well-informed traders on the globe, the central banks, at levels the world has never seen. What more do you need to know? Gold reclassified, the only other tier one reserve asset. India importing 400 million ounces of silver over the last 2 years, and record central bank purchases not only of precious metals but of rare earth metals and of all the soft and hard commodities. And it's happening if you look, and all of these deals that are being struck outside the dollar, it's all happening. Then you add into it all the stuff we talked about here in the States, it becomes that much more concerning that we're not prepared for what's coming. And in fact, when you talk about a cultural war, which I think we are in the midst of here in this country, you throw into it economic turmoil or a real big financial crisis. That's when these cultural wars become really big problems, because they're scapegoating and blaming, and with the lawlessness and the lack of respect
mhm,
for authority that we already see, that's just not a good mix. It's
yeah,
not a good mix for when all hell breaks loose. So I hate being this person to say all of these things, but if you don't notice it, then I think you're not doing yourself or your family a favor.
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess, you know, we could start to wrap it up. I mean, we've talked about a lot. I know you probably have some stuff to do. So is there anything else you want to throw out there?
No, I think that's
Real
it. I just
quick.
look forward to running shotgun with you, man, and doing
Yeah.
this every week. I think it's
Yep.
important we maintain consistency and do this because you know there are people relying on you
Yeah.
to give them the truth. I spend 2 to 3 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day researching,
Yep.
to give a few things to talk about every day. And
Yep.
I think it's important. And
Yep.
I'll do my best and be as transparent as I can to run shotgun with you. I think 2024 is going to be a very interesting year. And that's the Chinese curse. May you live in
Yeah.
interesting times. So I'm very honored to sit here with you, shotgun, and look forward to watching the world unfold together
Yeah.
in what will probably be the craziest years, a year of both of our lives, all
Yeah.
of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, and remember everyone, Slayer at Miles Franklin. I got you guys. I'll talk to me on the phone, email, whatever. I'll make sure to, get you guys hooked up. And yeah, also make sure you subscribe because I do post daily. So
I think we should
anyways,
do
yeah,
some live
yeah.
streams this year too, and I
Oh,
think it's good to get people, you know, more of a communicative
yeah,
um,
yeah.
situation where we're answering questions and building a community, because that's part of the challenge here is we are so divided here, unfortunately, now that building a community, finding people of similar mindset
That's a good
is
point.
a good way to help build this community, help us weather whatever it is that is coming. So doing the live streams is something that I'm totally up for, and talking to people is something that I enjoy quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so
You
much, everyone, for
got it, bud.
tuning in. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.